Okay, welcome to the Last Days Revelation. We're in Revelation chapter 9. What does the 5-month invasion have to do with the Muslim religion? We're going to explore that today. Hey, if you're just joining us, make sure you join back here tomorrow at 9 a.m. as we release a new video each day. And if you are watching this in the future, make sure you click on that playlist in the description so that you can see the entire video archive of this great study.
The swarm of locusts. So, verse 1 to 6, here's what it says. And the fifth angel blew his trumpet, and I saw a star fallen from heaven to the earth. And he was given the key to the shaft of the bottomless pit. He opened the shaft at the bottomless pit, the shaft of the bottomless pit. And from the shaft rose smoke like the smoke of a great furnace. Now, all these images, you don't have to be that biblically literate to see that this is a lot of demonic, satanic images. A star fallen from heaven, bottomless pit, smoke of a great furnace coming up from the pit. And the sun and the air were darkened with the smoke from the shaft. Then from the smoke came locusts on the earth. So whatever hell is releasing, there's smoke there, and then the locusts come from the smoke. This is very interesting imagery. I want you to see it because it's important to see what these locusts are. And they were given power like the power of scorpions on the earth. They were told not to harm the grass of the earth or any green plant or any tree, but only those people who do not have the seal of God on their forehead. So again, God is holding his people safely during the judgments that are coming upon the earth. Verse 5, they were allowed to torment them for 5 months, but not to kill them. And their torment was like the torment of a scorpion when it stings someone. And in those days, people, this is an interesting little statement, people will seek death, but will not find it. They will long to die, but death will flee from them. What is the historicist view? The historicist view is that Revelation is unfolding the time from Jesus' resurrection or the apostolic age, AD 33 to AD 70-ish, all the way until whenever Jesus comes back again. And so this is a broad, sweeping view of the church age. Now, just remember that. Because if that's the case, and we take that view, we are at trumpet number 5, and we are about around the time of 600 AD. And according to the historicists, very interesting interpretation here, the locust swarm that comes from the smoke that ascends from the pit of hell, and this is not going to be politically correct, so prepare yourselves. But they see it as the Muslim invasion of the Roman Empire from 612 to 763 AD. And I just want to say that when you look at this through the historicist view, they have a strong point. Like, this is actually a pretty strong argument that they're going to make based on their interpretation of Revelation chapter 9, being that this is the start of the Muslim movement. So in Judges chapter 6, verse 5, locusts is the word that is used to describe the innumerable army of the Midianites who came up against Israel, and Gideon with his 300 men defeated them. And so this is a common expression for the Arab enemies of God's people, locust swarm. And by the way, it says, if you look there in verse 4, it says that they were told not to harm the grass, the green plants, or any trees. Now, this is really cool, interesting. Just historicists are making a strong point here based on what we know of Islam. According to Muslim doctrine of holy war, like when they are supposed to go in and conquer a people because they see that that's their calling before Allah or their God to conquer other nations and bring them under subjection to Islamic law. Well, according to the doctrine of Islamic law, they are prohibited from destroying vegetation of any people that they invade. So this whole idea where it says in verse 4, they were told not to harm the grass, green plant, or tree. That's right in line with Muslim doctrines concerning holy war and conquest. The Muslim conquest, by the way, of 612 to 763 AD, decimated but did not destroy Greek and Latin churches. And so, like it says here, they were given power to harm but not to kill. They did not gain possession of the empire either. That will happen many, many centuries later. But they did easily, and this is historically factual, they did easily intimidate, destroy, and convert many corrupt and idolatrous Christians. Now, you got to know this. I say this all the time. There's always like a church within the church. with every church, with our church here in North Attleboro, Massachusetts, with your church wherever you go, there is always a church within the church, which means that there's people who actually belong to Christ in the church, and then there's people who are just kind of like hanging out. And just time will tell who's in the church and who's just hanging out. Just give it time, you'll find out. But in the Muslim conquest of the Eastern Roman Empire in the 600s, it was pretty easy and pretty effective for the Muslims to actually convert those nominal Christians. And the first lesson we gain from Revelation chapter 9, the first lesson that we're going to hear right here from the historicist view is strong Christians survive. Strong Christians survive turbulent times. Weak Christians cave. They just do. If you're just kind of like hanging out at church, if you're just doing the church thing because that's what mom did, that's what grandmom did, that's how you were raised, just watch out for that, because you are susceptible to these kinds of things. You are susceptible to deception. You are susceptible to lies. You are susceptible to the attractive lies that the enemy will put forth in your mind and in your heart. And so be careful. Christian, get strong. Christian, get into the Word of God. Christian, do what we're doing right now in the Deep End podcast, which is learn what God has to say. Feed your spirit and your mind and your body, and God will strengthen you for the days ahead. Now, let's ask this question about the 5 months in verse 5, because it says they were allowed to torment them for 5 months. What's that about? Well, obviously, the Muslim invasion did not last for 5 months in Eastern Rome. It lasted for 150 years. But this is interesting. This is interesting because listen to this. 5 months, a month is about 30 days. 30 times 5 is 150 days, which days are often interpreted as years or symbolic of years in the scriptures. And so if you take 150 days and make them 150 years, that's the exact period of time that the Muslims invaded the Eastern Roman Empire from 612 to 763 AD. That's just pretty crazy, if you ask me. That's just pretty interesting that it just lines up like that. So like I said, the historians have perhaps the strongest case for their view of their interpretation of Revelation based on the events of Revelation chapter 9. So this is pretty clear. This is pretty hard evidence that the historicist view is a strong view. But let's talk about the preterist view, because that also has a strong case here from Revelation chapter 9, and I want to show you how that case is strong. Going back to the idea that it's a locust invasion of God's people, of the land, if you remember that the preterist view is AD 70, the Roman invasion of Jerusalem and eventually the destruction of Jerusalem temple in AD 70 and the annihilation of the Jewish people in AD 70 by the Romans, they actually see, the preterist view says this is the demonic, the locusts are demons. They are demonic oppression upon the Jews during their last days or years of the Roman siege of Jerusalem, the last 5 months possibly, right? So there are reports in history, we have historical records, that in the final days of Jerusalem, again, AD 65 to AD 70, people in the city became entirely demon-possessed. They experienced progressive insanity. They lost the ability to reason. They attacked one another. They followed the most delusional messages of false prophets and teachers. Fathers killed their families. Mothers ate their children. This is historical fact. All of those experiences, all of those travesties, as horrible as they are, you need to realize that if it's demonic oppression, then this is just a description of the activity of Satan. Remember, Jesus says that Satan is the one who comes to steal, kill, and what? Destroy. What does Apollyon and Abaddon mean? Destroy. Where does this destruction come from? From the pit that is open, from the smoke, and it comes in through the Roman army into the city of Jerusalem in AD 70, and people are also given to mass delusion as demonic forces overrun the nation that rejected Jesus. They had a temporary reprieve from demonic oppression because the Son of God with the authority to cast out demons came to their city, and they killed him. They put him on a cross. They rejected him. Of course, we know he rose 3 days later and sent his disciples off in the power of the Holy Spirit to win the nations with the gospel. But what did Jesus say in Matthew 12? Matthew 12 has a little passage that we Christians really struggle to interpret. But if you think about the preterist view of Revelation chapter 9 and the demonic horde being the locust horde that sweeps into the Jerusalem city in AD 70, I want you to think about what Jesus says in Matthew 12 now in light of that. Matthew 12 verse 43 says, when an unclean spirit has gone out of a person. It passes through waterless places, seeking rest, but finds none. Then it says, I will return to my house from which I came. And when it comes, it finds the house empty, swept, and put in order. Then it goes and brings with it 7 other spirits more evil than itself, and they enter and dwell there. And the last state of that person is worse than the first. So, listen to this last line. So also will it be with this evil generation. Jesus talking about the generation in AD 33. This is crazy for me to think about. He came, he cast out demons, he swept and he put in order. Remember, he swept the temple literally, physically, of money changers and robbers and the people who were swindling the people of God coming to worship there. He literally swept the house and put it in order. The demons fled when Jesus came. When they put Jesus to the cross and rejected him, guess what happened? Those demons got 7 other demons with them and came back into the city. And 40 years later, the city is overrun with demonic oppression. Now, the preterists have a point also concerning the description of these locusts, because Josephus writes, now this is crazy. Going back to the appearance, remember it says that they were like, they had male faces but women's hair. Now, Josephus is a Jewish historian from around 75 AD, and he actually wrote books about the Roman conquest of the city of Jerusalem. And he writes about what the men did during that time. This is crazy, too. Listen to what he says. This is direct from Josephus, AD 70. They gave themselves up, the men, gave themselves up to effeminate practices, plaiting their hair and putting on women's clothes, drenched themselves with perfumes, and painting their eyelids to make themselves attractive. They copied not merely the dress, but also the passions of women, devising in their excess of licentiousness unlawful pleasures in which they wallowed as in a brothel. Now, the futurist view of this locust horde, the fallen star is the Pope. Some futurists identify this. Some also believe that the Pope will institute, and not this current Pope, but a Pope in the future. Again, futurist view during the tribulation. A future Pope will start to embrace false doctrines and start to disseminate these false doctrines throughout the church, such as New Thought, Spiritism, New Age philosophies, and others. Most futurists, however, good news Catholics, most futurists see the fallen star as Satan himself. The locusts are demonic hordes released against unrepentant sinners during the tribulation. The 144,000 are safe because they are sealed by God. Demon-possessed people in the Gospels did not have control over their own desires, and so they also could not take their own lives. I already mentioned that, but this is, again, the description of locusts. This is a Hal Lindsey classic interpretation here of Revelation chapter 9. The description of locusts have been equated by Hal Lindsey and others to Cobra helicopters, possibly from Russia. And if you ever look it up, you can Google Cobra helicopters later, not now, but you will see that, it's a stretch, but you could possibly say, oh, it looks like a locust, but there's no crown of gold and there's no hair, and it falls apart pretty quickly as you actually read the text and then look at the picture of the helicopter. But I think it's a stretch that that's what those are, but nonetheless, demonic hordes, totally plausible in the futurist view. I'm not disparaging that view. I'm just saying this is the wrath of God upon unrepentant generation. The spiritualists see the locust horde as internal decay, and that's important. Internal decay from within the Roman Empire. And history does show itself that Rome did destroy itself from within. Yes, the Goths and the Turks, or the Arabs, came in and destroyed both the Eastern and Western Roman Empire, but it was pretty weakened. It was pretty weakened by its selfish indulgence, by its greed, by its lusts, by its adulterous practices, by its sexual morality, just like you see today in America, just like you see today in the West. Any culture where sexual morality is celebrated, propagated, taught, normalized, you're going to see decay rotting slowly from within. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to happen over the course of centuries. And so that's why a nation can get away with it for several centuries, and then eventually it comes back to bite them. And I was just thinking about the internal rot of our age right now, where we see sexual morality prevalent in our culture. Illegal drugs prevalent. Legal drugs, prescription drugs, being abused, the prevalence of legalizing marijuana, and all of these practices that not too long ago, these practices were considered completely wrong. And now today they're celebrated. But if we consider the locust horde to be demonic, we have a picture also, by the way, of demonic activity. Back to Revelation 9, because listen, it says faces like men, which means that demons are intelligent. Hair like women, which means demons can be seductive. A woman's hair in the scriptures is constantly referred to as a seductive quality about her. The adulteress's hair is seductive to the simpleton, to the unwise man. So demons are intelligent. Demons are seductive. Teeth like iron's teeth. That speaks of once they get their grip on you, they hold you. And demons like scorpions, they're malicious. They sting. And demons they have breastplates like iron. This speaks to their invulnerability. That means that they attack, and it's almost as if they can't be resisted. And you say, man, I'm feeling depressed here about demonic activity. Well, listen, if you're a child of God, you have nothing to fear, because greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. But that doesn't mean that unbelievers are exempt from demonic activity. Sometimes we look at the activity of unbelievers and we got to see it for what it is. It is the intelligent, seductive, ferocious, malicious activity of demons influencing people who do not submit to Christ's rule and are not safe in his power and in his presence.
I know what you're thinking. I should probably binge watch the rest of the series on Revelation. Good plan. You can view the rest of the series, The Last Days Revelation Study, by going on this link over here. And if you want to hear me preach on the weekend currently, click this right over here. And don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell. Thanks for watching.